Hello there. Welcome to my show, COVID-19 update by Heerak for June 1st, 2020. We are in June. And as we see, riots are rocking the United States of America. And one of the themes of these riots is I can't breathe. And as you see from the protester there, she's white. So this is not really a black movement. And that's what separates this from the previous protests. Because Black Lives Matter protests were mostly black people protesting. But this is different in that different races are represented. And in some cases, there are more whites than blacks. And so let's go to COVID-19 death for last 24 hours in the United States. There were 809 COVID-19 deaths. And so yesterday there was a total of 104,358 deaths. Today we have 105,167 deaths. In terms of cases, it's rising steadily at around 20 to 30,000. Yesterday there were 1,789,364 cases. Today we have 1,811,370 cases. And so we have about 1,000 deaths per day. Yeah, I mean, it's still continue to kill a lot of Americans, which is surprising a lot of experts who thought this would be a seasonal flu. Obviously, it's not. It's already June, and it's killing 809 people in 24 hours. I was right, obviously, when I started this show a couple of months ago. I predicted that this wasn't a seasonal virus, but it's a 365 days a year virus. I was right. And for the record, Dr. Fauci was wrong. CDC was wrong. World Trade Organization was wrong. WHO, World Health Organization, was wrong as well. Yeah. I'm the Leonardo da Vinci of the 21st century. So I'm not surprised I was right. And WHO was wrong and CDC was wrong. I bring multiple discipline expertise to provide you with insights. And that is the power of my show, COVID-19 Update by Heerak. So make sure you tune in every day so you don't miss anything. You want to survive COVID-19. I discuss COVID-19 and other things that are happening while COVID-19 is happening, because the world is related. Maybe the song is about me. Yeah. It could be about George Floyd. I mean, he's the man that launched thousands of protests. How many people could say that, right? I mean, George Floyd may become more famous than Dr. Martin Luther King after year 2020. You just don't know. Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. What's happening in America? Um, the world is turning upside down because of this one man. And he was killed by the police. That's the biggest significance. But the problem for the police and the problem for President Bush is George Floyd has become like a symbol, for the world to represent police brutality. And it's kind of like the Reformation when Martin Luther succeeded in Reformation. Before him, there were a lot of people who died trying to reform the church to become more biblical, but you don't know too many of them, right? You may know John Huss. He's one of the reformers. He's from like the Czechoslovakia region. But there were dozens, hundreds of reformers who were killed, and you don't know any of their names. Many of them are forgotten, and it's kind of like this with George Floyd. Before George Floyd, a lot of African Americans were killed by the police. Some we know about, some we don't know about, but we don't really talk about them too much. Some are better known than others, like John Huss. You may know, some may not know. But it seems like everybody knows George Floyd now throughout the United States of America. And he's probably going to enter U.S. history books because he started revolt, not only in terms of in many cities, he started revolt that united all races in this revolt against police brutality. And no one before that has been able to do that. And in the sense, he's kind of like Martin Luther because Martin Luther is German, but he was able to unite all the nations in this Reformation. And people got involved, people of different languages, in ways that had never been seen before. So, and obviously when Martin Luther started the Protestant Reformation, he wasn't planning to start a Protestant Reformation. He just nailed the 95 Theses to a church in his local place, not thinking, it's going to create a world global phenomena, right? A lot of people who do historic things are not setting out to become global figures, but they become so. And so we have a saying in history, some are made great, right? Some are born great, some are made great, and some are thrown into greatness. I'm paraphrasing. And George Floyd is thrown into greatness, but sadly for George Floyd, he never knew while he was alive that he was going to be this great. You see? And in a sense, he's living eternally on earth, like he's an everlasting being on earth, because his fame started after he died, right? So it's a little bit strange in that most historic figures are on earth when they start becoming famous. George Washington, Dr. Martin Luther King, and some of them die, in the height of their fame, but they experience some fame while they're on earth. But with George Floyd, he wasn't famous at all on earth. But it was when he died that his fame started. So his starting point for fame was after his death. And we have cases of people's death launching wars. In the history of humanity, death of one person can start wars. And generally, they are significant people who are famous, like prince or kings, king's daughters or son. Somebody famous starts wars when they die. It's rare that someone who has not been known before starts a wave, a ripple effect in social discontent that becomes a revolt, and that could possibly become a war. And so George Floyd is a historical phenomena unlike anyone who has come before him. In a sense, you could say he's unique, and unique means one of a kind. He's a one of a kind because it's almost impossible to find anyone in history whose fame started after death. Uh, Certainly, it is impossible to find someone who united all races. Because you could say George Washington was basically hero of the white people, you know, uh, right? I mean, it's hard to say, he's hero of all races, right? It, you know, you could say Dr. Martin Luther King is the hero of the black people. Some white people like him, but he's not really big hero among white people. They celebrate his birthday because it's a national holiday, but they're not going to march and protest for him and risking their life, right? So Dr. Martin Luther King can at best be seen as like a hero, a legend. But he himself did not have that kind of power, even when he was alive and even now when he's dead, to unite everybody, to risk their lives, to protest. You're not gonna you're not gonna have even black people protesting, risking their life now for Dr. Luther King. But with George Floyd, this person that had not been known at all, there are whites, blacks, Asians, Hispanics protesting, risking their lives in front of the police, certainly risking their lives in front of COVID because we have 809 people who died in the last 24 hours. So COVID-19 it hasn't gone away. It's probably never going to go away. As healthcare experts say, it's here forever, kind of like HIV virus or hepatitis C virus. It's going to keep killing people. But different from hepatitis C and HIV, COVID-19 kills a lot of people, right? And so COVID-19 is positioned to be the most dangerous virus in the history of humankind. And I'm predicting that COVID-19 will kill 1 million American citizens by August 2020. So we have June, July, August, 3 months to see if I'm correct. We're 10% there. But I still think about 1 million people will be killed by August. The reason that I say that is, um, death rate isn't really going down. It's at around 1,000 in the United States, and we've been social distancing for past 2-3 months. And so now that the country is open, a lot of people are going to probably get COVID, and the death rate will most likely spike up. And that's why I'm sticking by my position that COVID-19 will kill about 1 million Americans by August 2020. And then it will kill over 10,000 nurses by December. I'm predicting that in the class of 2020 nurses, it's going to kill 20% by December. Because as you know, by fall, we're going to have flu A and influenza B striking and spreading throughout the nation. So you're going to see a sharp spike of deaths in October, November, December, January, February, far more than what we're seeing now. And not only is influenza A and B dangerous in and of themselves, they can kill 80,000 themselves, these flu viruses. They say that COVID-19 may become more deadly. So that's something that can happen. So if you combine those factors, we can have million die per month. I mean, that's a possibility in the winter. And that's why I'm calling on Arlington County, Alexandria City, Falls Church City, and Fairfax County Public Schools to close for fall. So I think there will be a lot of people dying. But let's see, this is a pandemic. 1918 Spanish flu pandemic killed over 50 million people, and it lasted 2 to 3 years. And there had been times when it started decreasing and people came out, and then, and then death rate exponentially grew, and that's how you have 50 million people die. You know, the first wave did not kill that many people. But this is not like influenza, Spanish flu pandemic of 1918 because that was seasonal. This doesn't seem to be seasonal per se, um, at least as far as we can see, because it's already June. Um, and there are a lot of people dying. Like in Brazil, there are like 1,000 people dying per day. And it's a smaller country than ours. And you know, there are a lot of people still dying in England, you know, in European countries. And Mexico is seeing a spike, and they have like around 10,000 or more people dead total, and it's rising. And so, yeah, I mean, my prediction is that at least 30 million United States citizens will die from COVID-19 in the next 2 to 3 years. And since we don't know whether virus will be developed, they may never be developed, and we may never have a cure. It's possible for us to have globally 100 million people die from COVID-19 or 500 million people die. We just don't know yet. We're just 2-3 months into it. As I said, Spanish flu virus, Spanish flu pandemic lasted 2-3 years. You know, and that's like what, 24 to 36 months. We're just like only 3 months into it in the U.S. So, you know, we're just at the beginning. We're not even at the middle. So we don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, life being what it is, life is very unpredictable, meaning COVID-19 is not the only thing you have to worry about. If you're a mother or a father, you know what I mean. Just because you have a baby doesn't mean that you're not going to have a problem at your workplace. Does not mean you're not going to have problem with your friends. Doesn't mean you're not going to have health problems. You may get breast cancer, you know, 6 months after you had birth of your child. And your husband can get into a car accident and become crippled. I mean, things can happen that are not directly related with the biggest event in your life, whether it's a birth of a baby or COVID-19. And what we're seeing is George Floyd protests are happening as 800 people or more die every day in America. And when you ask the protesters, why are you protesting? Are you afraid you're going to die from COVID-19? They will tell you that they're willing to die from COVID-19. They know the risk. They're taking risk, knowing the risk, because they think that fighting police brutality, fighting first responders who act in unethical way is the right way to go. And first responders are nurses, doctors, policemen, firemen, EMT, medics. These are all first responders. And as I said on yesterday's show, no US citizen should blindly trust a first responder. No human being deserves your respect like that. And I have shared with you yesterday that over 100,000 patients are killed by nurses every year by, quote, mistake. And I've mentioned yesterday that you don't know whether it's a mistake or not. It's kind of like George Floyd. When autopsy was done in Minnesota, they said there was no foul, there was no crime. But an independent autopsy was done today, and the independent autopsy said that there was asphyxiation, meaning choking to death, and so there was a homicide. So two studies can be done with two different answers. In the same way, let's say if your father died by, quote, mistake at a hospital, autopsy may show that there was no foul play. But a second autopsy may show that there was a foul play. So we just don't know. We're human beings. We live in a human society filled with uncertainties, but also errors. Sometimes people who are wealthy and powerful can manipulate governments society regulations or laws, even your boss at human resources to get you fired. You know, it just, there can be a lot of corruption, wheeling and dealing behind the scenes, and that may be one of the reasons why American citizens hate wealthy people. I don't think all wealthy people should be hated. I think there are wealthy people who are good, who pay 10% to the church, uh, try to fight abortion and gay marriage by financing Christian organizations that fight them. And you're welcome to donate to my political campaign, Heerak Christian Kim, for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District. As you know, I'm running for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District. I'm an official candidate for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District, which includes Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County. And I am coming to you from Arlington, which is in Northern Virginia. And I live about 4 to 5 miles away from Washington, D.C. And Arlington basically borders Washington, D.C. And I've shared that I am graduating with Master of Science from School of Nursing and Health Studies in Clinical Nurse Leader, so as a nurse expert. And the title of that certificate, nationwide certificate, is Clinical Nurse Leader. And there are 25 of us graduating basically in August. Our program goes until August, although we participated in the graduation ceremony. You know, I love my core members. I'm just gonna say, I love you guys. You know, my CNL who are 2020. I mean, we're like bound by suffering for life. All of us suffered so much in this program, Clinical Nurse Leader 2020 program. We are like blood brothers. You know, I mean, you know, we didn't like share blood or anything, but I mean, all of us share so much suffering. And many will tell you this is like the greatest suffering that we had in our life. And we're talking about people of all ages. There are people who just like start weeping while they're showering and just like plop down and start weeping because you know, because the program is so hard. I mean, that's not me, but somebody shared, you know, in the classroom that they did that. And so, you know, it's a very difficult program, but it's worth it because, as I said, we are nationally certified at the end of this program through an exam we take, but all of us will pass, you know, because, you know, we're well trained to become nationally certified clinical nurse leaders. The title is Clinical Nurse Leader. So we're experts like in clinical nursing, right? So we become leaders of clinical nurses. So yes, I mean, 2 years of just absolute earthly hell that all of us went through, but it was worth it. I'm telling you, it was worth it. That's why I'm saying, you know, please come to our program. If you want to be a leader of clinical nurses, like if you want to be a leader of the best nurses in the world, then you come to Georgetown. Obviously, you have to be ready to stop your life completely, maybe stop going to all parties, you know, and then just study, you know. And I'm going to, you know, share everything with you because I don't want to hide anything from you. You know, I started COVID-19 Update by Heerak to save your life of your children, and to make your life better, to make your children's life better. So if you're watching this show and you have children who just graduate from college, they don't know what they want to do, encourage them to apply to Georgetown, and, you know, and see if they want to save lives. If they want to, this is a great program for them. But I'm going to be honest with you. We started out with 34 people. In year 2018, there were 34 of us who started the pre-course. Pre-course starts from June to August, and it's called, you know, pre-course on pathophysiology. That's considered the hardest class. And then we have actual pathophysiology class in some, like starting in late August, September. And so there were 34 of us when we started this pre-pathophysiology class in June. And now 25 are graduating. So it's, you know, so we we lost like 30%, right? Because 34, now we were 25. Uh, and we had a really nice person from Texas who moved out here um, with her husband. I think she's yeah, I think they're married, and they moved out here. He got a job here, and she left and went back to Texas after like in October. Yeah, and so she's in Texas now. I think she's like finishing up a program there. You know, which is kind of easier. But yeah, so I mean, we've lost a lot of good people, but I mean, this requires like total dedication. So think of this as like 2 years of boot camp, literally. It's hard every day for 2 years. Yeah, I mean, just ask anybody in our program. I mean, we go into August and we're still working like dogs. I mean, geez, we have like, let me just give you a schedule for this week. We have a midterm due that's like 6, 7 page typed, and you have to like analyze a very complex scenario, and you have to do research, read like articles after articles, and that's due on Saturday. On Monday, there is another like 5 or 6 page paper due uh, that requires other articles. Um, that's just in one class, and then yeah, you know, and then there's like simulation modules too, like two of them due this week. Um, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff too. Um, yeah, yeah, and so and this is summer. This is like our final semester, summer semester 2020, and we're still going like intense every day. So it is a hard program, and as I said, I borrowed $200,000, $100,000 per year for 2 years to do this program. There are others that I know who did the same, but even so, I say it's worth it, and that's why this is a good program. If I'm here telling you don't apply, then the program isn't good. But I'm telling you to apply. I think it's the greatest decision you'd make if you want to be leader of clinical nursing. So this program is good. But I'm not going to lie to you. You have to stop your life for 2 years. Literally stop your life and just study every day. And that's why, it may not be a bad idea if you're living in Falls Church, Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax County, to 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 live with mom and dad, and then do the course, because that way they'll feed you, they may do your laundry, if they're spoiling you, you're eating good food, nutritious food, and then there's no stress because like your own room, your mom and dad to comfort you. So it may be the smartest thing to do if you just graduate in 2020, or if you're going to graduate in 2021, you can apply in the fall. I think the deadline is like around November 1st. There are some summer courses you have to take, so I would encourage you to do them at a community college. You don't have to spend that much money. Knock them out. You could probably knock them out this summer or in the fall. You just have to finish it by like before June. So you have like a year to finish like 5 or 6 prerequisites. So you do have to submit like you finished all of them. I mean, you could get accepted, and then obviously you can finish by June. It's not a problem. So yeah, but I mean, if you could knock them all out by fall, that's even better. So I would recommend you do that. But yeah, so I would recommend you apply for that. And I applied and got in, and I'm happy that I went through this program. Although 2 years was very hard, very very intense program. But now I could say, in August I'll be clinical nurse leader, right? Nationally certified, an official expert. So it's exciting, and I shared my knowledge with you through this COVID-19 update by Heerak, and along with other things. I'm already a nationally certified phlebotomist. I've been for many years. So I'm a official expert in healthcare because I'm nationally certified phlebotomist. But and I have been certified as clinical, as a CNA, like a certified nurse assistant in Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland. So, I've been in healthcare for a while. So you're good in hands when you're watching this show. But I'm running for governor now because I feel that you need me to be in U.S. Congress to help you. And so I'm officially registered as a candidate for U.S. Congress with FEC, Federal Election Commission, which is a federal governing body. And I'm officially registered as a federal candidate with United States Congress, Office of the Clerk. So Nancy Pelosi knows I'm running. I mean, it's public record, so all the congressmen and candidates who are running know me. Can look up my record. But right now in the state of Virginia, there's a foul play. All the government buildings are closed because of COVID-19, right? And Virginia is like a stay-at-home order. And Governor Northam issued this order on March 30th, 2020 to last until June 10th. And the deadline for me under state of Virginia election law, because each state has their own laws that govern the state, is that I, as an independent candidate for U.S. Congress, have to submit 1,000 signatures to Virginia State Board of Nursing, not Board of Nursing, Virginia Board of Elections, which is a Virginia governing body. It's a state governing body that basically carries out election laws. I said, give me a waiver because Virginia Governor Northam issued a stay-at-home order. So now I have no choice but to collect 1,000 signatures that I cannot collect under Virginia state law. So since I cannot collect these signatures because now it's illegal for me to go to door knocking and collect signatures because of Virginia Governor Northam's stay-at-home order, I need a waiver. And so the top guy in Virginia State Board of Elections, Chip Piper, wrote back and said, I can't give you a waiver because I don't have a legal authority to. Obviously, Governor Northam does, so I wrote him a letter. And he hasn't responded yet. It was like May 11th. And this is like June 1st. So, I'm contacting his office. I mean, I need a written response. Obviously, my position is the Virginia Governor Northam is playing foul. He's being unethical, manipulating the police political process, playing dirty, and trying to block me out of Virginia's ballot box, although I'm an official candidate for U.S. Congress. And the deadline is June 9th. And so I'm just saying this is not fair. So I'm asking that you call Virginia Governor Northam's office. You can email him, text him, call him. And also Don Beyer, call him, text him, email him, letting them know you want them to waive my 1,000 signatures because of COVID-19 and the stay-at-home order, which makes it impossible for me to collect signatures door to door. So if you could do that, you'll be helping yourself because I'm helping you, right? You need me in U.S. Congress. This COVID-19 is not going to go away. It's here to stay. As you see, it's killing 809 people per day. More than that, most days. And as I said, I'm predicting that 1 million Americans will die by August. Let's see. I think I will be correct. But just keep watching this show. You definitely need me in U.S. Congress. U.S. Congress needs me. Yeah. Now, you have become great when people are going to create art around you. And so George Floyd has not only become a symbol that unifies the American people in ways that has not been done different races to protest oppression by first responders, police, firemen, nurses, doctors. These are first responders. People that you put your trust to protect your life, right? Police cars have those things written, right? To serve and protect. So the role of police officer is to protect your life, right? Just like nurses and doctors. But that trust hasn't been violated, right? And so protesters are unifying to protest first responders, police brutality, violation of trust. And so it's not just one thing. There are people who are just protesting George Floyd, but for many people who are protesting, it's not just about one person. This one person represents a phenomena that extends to other areas. So some people are protesting the fact that you cannot trust your elected officials, that they're not doing their job in an honest way. Some are protesting, uh, all first responders, nurses, doctors, firemen, and policemen who may have intentionally endangered life of Black people. We learned in vulnerable population class last year with Professor Diane Davis that there is a serious mistrust by African Americans of the hospital, that they believe that there's discrimination there. And we had a very interesting discussion last year about that. So for African Americans, it's not just the police, right? And I'm glad that I went to Georgetown University to be in clinical nurse leader program, because I got exposed to these things that I've heard about from my Black friends. As I've shared with you, I grew up in a Black neighborhood in Logan, Philadelphia. So I've heard things like this, but I was able to actually study it, read articles on it, and discuss it with my fellow cohort 2020 CNL members, clinical nurse leader members. And we had a very lively discussion, with Professor Diane Davis leading it. And the course was called Vulnerable Populations. And obviously African Americans in healthcare being vulnerable because there are white nurses who discriminate against African American patients. That's the thing that we discussed. As I've discussed with you, Blacks being mistreated is not just by the police. If you think that only police officers are mistreating Black people, you are deeply mistaken. Because when we were talking about vulnerable populations, Black people in healthcare, we were focusing on how Black people perceive hospitals and how Black people are mistreated in the healthcare system. And when social leaders talk about health inequities, and you may have heard that term, you may not have heard that term, but that's a very popular concept that we talk about in healthcare. This concept of health inequity or health inequality. What that is saying is if you're a person of color, like Asian American, Black American, Hispanic American, then your access to healthcare is not as good as if you're a white American. So that's the concept. And there are a lot of research done on it, a lot of articles written on it. And I actually say that there are a lot of white Americans who are in poor neighborhoods who don't get access to healthcare either. And there are a lot of white people in farm and rural areas who don't get access to healthcare either. And so there is actually a growing body of research on that topic as well. So it's not just about Black, Hispanic, Asians, but also white people who are poor under the poverty line and white people who live in farming areas, very poor rural areas. So we talk about health inequity, meaning these individuals do not have as good of access to healthcare as, let's say, middle-class white Americans, um, or wealthy white Americans. And so, um, one of the things that I want to do when I'm elected as U.S. Congressman in Virginia's 8th District, Arlington, Alexandria Falls, Church, and Fairfax County, is to work on this, to improve healthcare for everyone, not just Black people, but Hispanic people, Asian people, poor white people. I want to help everybody, And so, but, we cannot deny the fact, however, that Black people have suffered in healthcare system the longest because they have been in America the longest, right? Um, and so it's a very real thing. Black people are not just mistreated by the police. That's like always on the screen, right? Because, people in the street videos tape it, and then there's a police officer beating someone in his uniform and he has a gun. So it seems like it's a big deal. And it gets glorified. But I assure you, there are Black people who may be asphyxiated by nurses in hospital. You don't know. There can be white nurses who put the pillow on the head of a Black man and kills him. Who knows? I'm not saying that they do that, but I'm saying that is a theoretical possibility. You just don't know, right? How are you going to know? It's not like they're videotaping, right? So you just don't know what's going on. And so, but one thing is clear, there are articles written on this topic. There is active discussion. As I said, we had very long discussion at Georgetown University with clinical nurse leaders, students, and class of 2020, my court members, with Professor Diane Davis in this vulnerable population class, how Black Americans are mistreated in the healthcare system. And we talked about how even Black nurses get mistreated by white nurses or in the healthcare system. Sometimes they're mistreated by even white patients. So we talk about that. And, even in our ethics class, our professor of ethics, Sarah Vitone, she asked us this question just like the other day, like last week, I think it was. She said, what would you do if a white patient requested a non-Black nurse? Because that happens all the time. You think that it doesn't happen? It happens all the time. And Professor Vitone's position is that you should just have the Black nurses treat the patients. One of the Black students, Billy, my friend Billy, he kind of looks like George Floyd, and he's a graduate of United States Naval Academy, and he's currently an officer in the Navy, served Navy for like 20 years. And he's in this program. He's graduating with me and other clinical nurse leaders in August. And he says something interesting. And I'm going to share it with you because, it's nothing to hide. And he said he prefers to give the patient what the patient wants. So if the white patient is a racist, let's just say, and says she wants a white nurse, Billy was saying, why don't you just give her a white nurse? And I take that position. I agree with Billy because the reason that I take that position is because whether you are racist or not, you may have certain preferences. You may be used to certain ways. And you may be dying, or you may be like tired, you may be in pain. And if you have preferences, or maybe you're a racist, it doesn't matter. If you're a patient who says, oh, I'm in pain, I cannot put up with like Asian nurses and I'm her nurse, I may be offended, But why impose myself on her? You know, and I'm an evangelical Christian, so I believe it's important to be kind and nice and do unto others as you would have done unto you, meaning like what you would prefer to be done to you. And the concept of kindness that I learned at Philmont Christian Academy, where I went to school, elementary, middle school, and high school in Philadelphia. It's actually in Erdenheim, PA. It's like in Glenside, in Pennsylvania's Montgomery County, near Westminster Theological Seminary. Is that when people treat you with evil, you should treat them with good. And so when people hate you, you love them. And so, using that concept that I learned from Philmont Christian Academy, I feel like, let's say I have a white patient and she's racist and she hates Asians, because, there are whites who hate Asians, maybe because they lost their father in a war in Vietnam or in Korea, by the communist Chinese or North Koreans. So they come to hate all people because their father died when they were little. And, for me, I don't think it's right to judge them. See, this is where I disagree with white progressive liberals who condemn racists. In a sense, I don't think they're being kind. I think to be Christian means to tolerate racists. This is why I totally disagree with Southern Baptist Convention ministers in Virginia who are saying you should fight racism, because I don't think that's what Jesus calls us to. Jesus never fought racism. During his earthly ministry, never once fought racism. And so, what would Jesus do? Jesus in Virginia would never fight racism, because Christian love means loving you wherever you are. So if you're a racist, and the Bible doesn't consider racism as sin, in fact, New Testament supports slavery. Like St. Paul told a slave who became a Christian, Onesimus, to go back to his slave master and continue to live as slave. That's what St. Paul taught a slave to do. So slavery is not sin in the New Testament, and I've shared that with you before. And racism is not sin in New Testament. So when there are Baptist preachers in Virginia are saying they're going to fight racism, I think they're going against the gospel. And I've shared with you on that point. I don't think Christians should fight racism in churches, because that's not what Christianity is about. Christianity is not about fighting racism. What is Christianity about? Christianity is about love of Jesus Christ and being born again in Jesus. So you believe in Jesus, you are saved, and you go to eternal life in heaven, and you have a relationship with Jesus throughout your life. So that's what Christianity is about. It's not about becoming a non-racist. A lot of Christians are racist throughout their life, and racism is not a sin, so the Bible doesn't condemn it. So you could be a great Christian and be a racist. You could be a white nationalist racist, black nationalist racist, Hispanic nationalist racist, Asian nationalist racist, and still be a great Christian. Racism isn't sin in the Bible. It's not sin in the Old Testament. It's not sin in the New Testament. So this is why I'm saying Virginia's Baptists who fight racism, they're going the wrong way. And so when I explain to you, for me as a Christian, to love as Jesus Christ loved means that when my patient is a racist and hates all Asians, she must have a reason for that. Right? Christian love is understanding her pain, not trying to change her, because racism isn't sin in the Bible, right? So I am saying the Baptists in Virginia are going the wrong way, trying to change everybody. When racism isn't sin, you shouldn't be trying to focus on that in church. So what I'm saying is, when my patient is a racist, and I've had racist patients before, who hates Asians. And my best friend Ed Mosang from Philman Christian Academy, he told me my uncle hates gooks, like Asians, like you. I'm like, what? He's like, Ed's like, yeah, my uncle hates gooks, like Vietnamese and Koreans. Like he hates them. I'm like, why? And Ed said, well, because of Korean War. I'm like, okay. So he's like, when we visit our uncle together, because we're best buddies, I think it was the San Francisco area, like his family lives there. He said, don't mind him if he says racist stuff. And I said, okay. Do you see what I'm trying to tell you? Ed and I are best friends. I mean, he's not racist. He doesn't hate me. I'm Korean. I'm his best friend. But he knows that his uncle, he doesn't like black people. He just hates Koreans and Chinese and Vietnamese because of the Korean War. So he's racist against Asians. And he's living in California. Like, ironically, in San Francisco, there's so many Asians, right? But, I mean, yeah. But anyway, and my best friend is saying, well, my uncle is a racist against Asians, like not against blacks, not against Mexicans, against Asians. And so, yeah, I'm offended, but do you see? I mean, you cannot live your life being offended, because that eats away at your soul. If I'm offended at every people who call me a chink, I would not be the happy person that you see before you. I'm a happy person because I'm a Christian. I love them back. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think Jewish people don't understand this concept because, the Jewish Bible doesn't have this concept of like loving your enemies, It's like a Christian thing. And so Jews, I mean, I'm an expert of Jews, and they always like hate people who hate them. And that's not Christianity. Christianity is not like eye for an eye, hate people who hate you. It's like love people who hate you. That's Christianity. That's what sets us apart from Islam and Judaism and Hinduism and Buddhism. Because we're the only religion, Christianity, that says love people who hate you. And so, not all the Christians live by it. And that's why I'm saying the Baptists who are trying to fight racism, you're wrong. Because you're trying to say, well, we just want to change everybody. That's not the concept of Christian love. Christian love starts not from changing others, but changing yourself. Right? You're not pointing at your finger at others. You're racist and you have to change. No. It's like, how can I love you better? Even though you're racist. That offends me. I mean, racism isn't sin, so you can't call them sinners for being racist because they have the right to be racist in Christianity. Or own a slave in Christianity. That's not a crime in Christianity. It's not a sin. And so, so how can I love them? And you see this played out in the concept in the book, Uncle Tom's Cabin as well. There's a long discussion about that. So in Christianity, it's about how can I love you? So let's say I have a racist patient who hates Koreans, who looks down on Koreans, see me as inferior. And the patient says, I want a white nurse. I may be hurt, I may be offended, but I am happy to provide her with a white nurse. Why? Because I want to love her, return her hatred for love. I don't want to just make her into an idea, right? Concept of equality, equity, these are all ideas. She's a human being, flesh and blood. She's not an idea. And what I do not like about white liberals, white progressives, is they try to treat human beings like an idea. Like if you don't fit their idea, then they're going to mistreat you. That's like white liberals. And I think that's just such a wrong way to create a positive society. Like if you don't fit their idea, they're going to mistreat you. And that's why white liberals try to get evangelical Christians fired from their job when they want homosexuality legalized or abortion illegalized. Because in their mind, you're not fitting their idea, so they're going to mistreat you. They're going to get you fired. They're going to make sure you starve and not have food to put on your table because you don't fit their idea. So for me, if I'm working as a nurse at a hospital and there's a white racist who hates Koreans, she may love blacks and Hispanics, but she just hates Koreans, and she asks for like another nurse, I'm gonna say, yeah, let's provide patient-centered care. Let's give her what she wants. Because my mission in life is not to make her life miserable. Because let's say I say I'm offended that you are telling me that I'm not good enough for you, and I start an argument with somebody who's in a deathbed or suffering in a hospital. Is that a kind thing to do? I mean, she may die of a heart attack, for God's sake. You see what I'm saying? So as a nurse, my mission isn't to make sure every patient becomes non-racist. That's not my calling as a nurse. I became a nurse to treat people regardless of who they are. So let's say there was a guy who killed like 30 people and then was shot by the police and comes in to be treated. I'm going to show love and treat him because I'm not the judge, right? I'm not the police. I'm a nurse. So I'm just going to save this guy's life, even though he might have killed 30 police officers in cold blood, which I disagree with. But I'm there to save him because I'm a nurse. And I'll do that with love, not with hatred. And you see, that's what sets Christianity apart from other religions, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. Because those religions don't say you need to do that. Christianity does. This is why I like Christian ethics, Christian Bible ethics, because I'm not there to make you a non-racist. That's not my calling. In a hospital, I'm not trying to impose myself on you because I think my idea is superior to your idea. No, that's not. That's what liberals do, white progressives do. They're going to make sure you accept me, an Asian man, to treat you, the white woman, white man. That's not my calling. If you want someone else and we have someone else available, I'm like, let's give the patient what the patient wants. You know, that's my philosophy. Because for me, you know, that is Christian love. When you can accommodate people, let's accommodate people. Do you see why I hate white liberals? Because white liberals do not believe in this concept. They're trying to fit you into a box, an idea, like non-racist idea. They want to create a non-racist society so much, they're going to like torture you, even like when you're in a hospital, to force you to accept different races that you hate. I'm not saying you should be hating these people, but geez, I mean, you know, I am a nurse in a hospital. You know, I'm not a politician, for God's sake. I am a politician because I'm running for U.S. Congress and Virginia 8th District. But you know what I'm saying. But the point is, I'm not there to educate you in the hospital, right? When you're my patient, my job is not to educate you in social things. I mean, you're a grown-up person. You know, I mean, you could be a mass murderer. Should I sit there lecturing you about why you should not kill 30 police officers as I'm treating your bullet wound? I mean, I may send you into shock with all the lecturing. You know, my job is to make sure you live. And in order to do that, I have to create a peaceful, quiet, calm environment when you are not going to go into you know, some kind of hypertensive crisis because you're so stressed out. right? And if you hate Asians, the best thing for me to do as a nurse is to make sure you get the person you want, like some white Aryan looking person, so that you are in the most quiet, calm environment with the least amount of stress. I see that as an obligation as a nurse, and an ethical value of non-malfeasance. Non-malfeasance is doing no harm. So for me, imposing myself on my patients who are racist to lecture them about not being racist is violating the ethical value of non-malfeasance. Do no harm. Because my lecturing you to be non-racist, the patient who's like suffering, I am doing harm. I am creating undue stress. Why should I do that? Do you see what I'm saying? This is why my Christian value system, my Christian Bible ethical system, I believe is superior to Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, and Buddhism. And I've studied all of these religions. And that's why I'm a Christian, because Christianity is a religion that creates for a peaceful society. The reason why American society is so tumultuous is because there's all these people trying to make people non-racist. That creates society that is more volatile. So for me, that should not be your mission to destroy racism in society, because it's going to stress everybody out. You should work in a positive way. How can we create a society where everybody's treated well without putting labels like racism, And so let's say I accommodate the white racist patient. She may not think about it and continue to be racist. That's one possibility. Another possibility is she may be moved that I don't return her hate with hate. Even though I'm not lecturing, just by my action, she may be like, oh, maybe I was wrong. And she may change on her own. But I'm saying I'm not there to change her racist nature or attitude. That's not what the role of nursing is. I'm not a nurse to change people's minds, to change people's cultures, to change people's philosophy, to change people's religions. That's not why I'm a nurse. My being a nurse is I'm there to heal the patient, right? Unless I'm a nurse in the church. Like if I'm a nurse working in a church hospital, then obviously I'll share the gospel and try to convert them to Christianity, because that's the nature of the thing. And obviously eternal life is the important thing. I mean, but let's say I'm working on a secular, hospital like Virginia Hospital Center. My primary role is to help the patient live, whether the patient just killed 30 cops, whether the patient is the head of the KKK or Black Muslims or Black Panthers or Black Lives Matter. It doesn't matter who they are. My job is to help them. Or head of a black gang. It doesn't matter. Crips and Blood gang. I'm there to save this person's life. Right? That's the role of a nurse. And that's why Christian ethics, I believe, is superior to like Judaism ethics, Hinduism ethics, Buddhism ethics, Jainism ethics, Islamic ethics, because they don't have this concept. And this is why I oppose all the Baptist ministers in Virginia who fight racism in church. You should stop. That's not what Christianity is about. Christianity is not about fighting racism. Bible does not consider racism as sin, New Testament or Testament. Yeah, love of Christ is superior to anything this world can offer you. Fighting racism, that's an earthly thing. That's a human thing. And you want to degenerate the Church of Jesus Christ to do earthly human things? Shame on you, Baptist ministers of Virginia who fight racism in churches. Shame on you. Yeah, so what is love? And this is why I appreciate Billy. I have high respect for Billy. I like the guy. I think he's a good man. I mean, I don't know him like I know like Ed and most of my best friend. But little I know of him, as colleague and friend in the last year, because he was like in doing military stuff before that. He took 1 year doing military stuff, so I've only known him less than a year. But what little I know of him, from what he says, what he does, I could see he's a good man. Like, for example, him saying like, if the white woman's racist, wants a white nurse, let her have it. And that's my attitude. I'm not a nurse to stress patients out. I mean, obviously, sometimes you have to stress patients out. Like, you have to tell them not to smoke, because smoke can actually kill you. So we have to give that education. And if you're a smoking person, I'm sure you're stressed out, but they have to hear that. So we got to find the right time to like talk about that, or drinking. If you're an alcoholic, we have to find the time to kind of talk about like services that are available to you, like the 12-step, Alcoholics Anonymous, things like that. There are things that we have to do as nurses to help you. But I'm like, racism, that's not really an issue. And I know there are white liberal lesbian nurses, they make that an issue. And I think that's wrong. I don't know a single Black nurse who makes this an issue. I mean, I know a lot of Black nurses, I do. I know a lot of Black nursing professors. I don't know a single Black nursing professor who says you should make that an issue. Like, trying to make a white racist patient into a non-racist. All the people who talk about it so far that I've seen, and I've heard it from like a lot of nurses. They're all white. And they're coming from, maybe position of guilt, because they are white, they feel guilty about white people who are racist, So I could understand the white guilt among white liberals. But for me, as a colored man who have experienced a lot of racism by white people, I think these white liberal progressives are on the wrong track. Because I think it puts the focus away from what we're supposed to be doing, like as nurses, in my opinion. In my humble opinion, you could disagree with me. Obviously, this is a free country. But and that's why I appreciate Billy. And Billy actually looks like that drawing, Justice for George. He looks more like that than I Can't Breathe George. But yeah, anyway, he's a good guy. I hope you have a chance to meet him. He's a good guy. Yeah, so Billy and I, we see eye to eye on this, Obviously, we both agree there's racism. We both don't like racism because we get targeted and we suffer from it. But, I am fighting for George Floyd, not because he's Black, but because he was mistreated by police officers based on his color. Nobody should be mistreated. Black police officers should not mistreat white people because they're police officers and white people are not police officers. I think it goes both ways. So I don't want to make this into like a racism issue. So I think we're going in the wrong direction with that. Because, the white police officer who put his knee on George Floyd's neck has an Asian wife. I mean, he's obviously not a racist in the traditional sense of the racism or white nationalists. And, it's human experience is very complicated. He might have done that not because he's a racist, and he may not be racist at all. He might have done that just because he had a bad day. I'm not saying this justifies it, but I'm just trying to understand where it's coming from. This man who fell in love with an Asian woman, married her, why would he do that to a Black man? One possibility is he's racist. I mean, that may be. I'm not throwing that out. But, too many people are assuming that he's a racist, and I think you can never assume. Whenever you assume, there's a chance that you could be wrong. And that's why, I don't talk about him as a racist per se, right? Because, yes, there's a chance that he did that because he's a racist and he hates Black people. That there's a possibility. But second possibility is he might have had a bad day. right? Have you had a bad day when you like go home and kick something? Like even your pet? You shouldn't do that obviously, but you might have. Um, and so he might have had a horrible day. Maybe he had a fight with his wife, the biggest fight of his life, and he was just upset. And then he thought it was just, scaring the guy. He didn't think the guy was going to die. You'd be surprised how idiotic some people are. I teach fifth graders, at Savoy Elementary School. Right now I'm in nursing school, obviously for 2 years full time. But I had this one student, and my fifth graders at Savoy Elementary know exactly what I mean. This guy who wants to play in an NFL. So he's fifth grader, but he's like playing community football. He's very serious about football, And he would body slam other students in the class. I mean, he would body slam them. He would throw them. He would like, I'm like worried that he'll break somebody's bones because he's kind of heavy set. And so I worry, like every second when I'm teaching my students at Savoy Elementary School, I'm always stressed because I don't want anybody to get hurt or break anything. So I'm always very careful. Like I'm, like mother hen watching, making sure nobody gets hurt. And this guy, like, when I had my turn, like my back turned or something, or like we're lined up to go to like cafeteria, and he's like in the end of the line, and like I have my back turned just for like a couple seconds, and he's body slamming somebody. I was like, I should be laughing, but he's laughing, and the kid, other kids laughing too. But I'm like, no, don't do that, don't do that. I don't want anybody to get hurt. But yeah, so I have a talk with him alone afterwards, so like that. But you'll be shocked how stupid some people are. I mean, he's not stupid; he's very smart. But I'm saying like he doesn't think he's going to break anybody's bone when he's lifting them up and body slamming them on the ground. Of course, you could break somebody's bone. So all I'm saying is, you cannot assume that this white police officer was trying to kill this black man. I'm saying he might have. I'm not throwing away that possibility. So he may be a racist who just wanted to kill black people in broad daylight when everybody's watching and he's been videotaped. But, I don't know. I'm not as convinced of that argument. Especially, because he was being videotaped. They was talking to the person who was videotaping him on the phone. I don't think he was going to try to kill somebody while somebody's videotaping and he's talking to the guy who's videotaping. There's other police officers around him. So I don't think he was trying to kill him. I think it was just maybe trying to scare him. And when he said, I can't breathe, he just didn't believe it. You have to be a guy to understand this. I'm a guy. And some guys play rough. I hate rough play, I tell you, But some guys play rough. And like, they'll do things to you and you're like crying, uncle, let me go. I can't breathe. They don't believe you. I kid you not. This is how guys play. At least since elementary, middle school, high school, I've seen guys play like this in every grade. And you tell them you can't breathe, they're still continuing. I'm like, can you understand the words? The person saying he can't breathe. Why can't you just get off the guy? And generally I pull the guy away when people are like saying something. Sometimes guys play and, it's like among guys, they kind of play rough sometimes, but, when somebody's saying they can't breathe, you got to try to drag somebody away. So probably the other police officers should have just kind of pulled him away. There were 3 of them, right? And so I kind of blame them for not pulling him away because that's the way guys work. You just leave him there to like, but anyway, but like sometimes, guys, they play rough and nothing bad happens, and maybe this guy, had that experience where like his friends were saying, I can't breathe, and it was still sitting on their, back or whatever. I don't know if he ever did this neck thing. It just seems really stupid. But maybe he thought he was just being rough, but he thought he wasn't really applying pressure that much. Who knows what he was thinking? Um, so, I'm just saying, it's possible that he's not a racist at all. Maybe he loves black people. That's a possibility. I'm just saying, just be open to that possibility because that may be possible. And he was just playing rough um, because he had a bad day. It's a possibility. I'm not saying that he's still guilty of murder, right? Because you shouldn't play rough like that, all right? You should be having your knee on somebody's neck. I mean, ignorance of the law is no excuse. But I'm saying, there are all these different possibilities. So for me, George Floyd is not about racism. It's about police mistreatment. And obviously there's police treatment of people of color, but that's not the same as racism. You know what I mean? I mean, you cannot just say when people are mistreating you, they're mistreating you because they're racist. They may be, but they may not be racist at all, but they could still mistreat you. So I think it's more precise to say we're fighting against police mistreatment or first responder mistreatment of people of color. I think it's important to be precise because when we say we're just fighting racism, it dilutes everything, right? We have to be precise. Police should not mistreat all people, but especially black people or people of color, right? I think that's a better way to go. So if you take these like labels off, like racism, I think we can achieve better things in society. Because what we're trying to do is take away mistreatment, right? Right? Whenever black people get arrested, whether the police officer is white, black, Hispanic, Latino, or Asian, they should treat the black person, black person driving the car with respect. I'm just saying, let's treat each other with respect. And I think we need to focus on condemning mistreatment of black people. Whether they're racist or not. You think it's okay if the non-racist person mistreats black people? Like, you think it's okay if it's a Hispanic or black police officer who mistreats black driver? You think that's okay? I don't think that's okay. So I'm just saying, I mean, yes, there is racism in society, but I think when we put labels on things, we may not be able to solve the problems. That's what I'm saying. Because what I want to see is when black drivers are stopped, that they're not treated with respect or with violence. And so I think we need to focus on mistreatment by first responders, nurses, doctors, firemen, police officers, right? We want to end mistreatment, abuse of power, abuse of authority by first responders, whether nurses, doctors, police officers or firemen or EMT or medic. And so that's why I agree with Billy. I think, and maybe it's because we are, like he's black and I'm Asian, we experience a lot of racism that, we've had longer time to think about this, from the vantage point of like being victimized. And so it gives us a perspective that may not exist among people who've not had that experience. I'm, it may be a possibility. I'm just, kind of throwing that one out there. But yeah, so that's why, I think we should talk about, that's why I like the term Black Lives Matter. I like that term Black Lives Matter because it does matter, right? But they're not saying we're fighting racism. That's not their first statement. Their first statement is Black Lives Matter. And that should be the point. Black Lives Matter, right? That's why I like the term. I mean, I know, people call Black Lives Matter like a black nationalist, black racism against whites. I've never heard it all. And it may be, I have no problem with racism. Racism isn't sin. So if you're black racist against whites, you have the right to be a racist. I mean, you're protected by the First Amendment. So I like Black Lives Matter because of that. Because they're not using labels, like Obama does. Obama throws around word racism all the time, and I don't think that's helpful. I think Black Lives Matter, that is a good way to talk about things. So Black Lives Matter, don't mistreat Black people, don't mistreat Black people like property, don't try, I like that, I mean, that's the point, I think it gets the point across more effectively than putting labels, because people start shutting down if you start using labels. You're racist, you're anti-Semite, you're never going to win over anybody by using labels. You're just going to alienate them. And that's why Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's brilliant. I don't know who came up with this idea, but I want to shake that person's hand, Whoever came up with Black Lives Matter, that person is like a genius, because in my opinion, that is the right direction. And so, yeah. But anyway, yeah, so you see, for me, Christian ethics. This is why I'm a Christian, and I want America to go back to God, right? Because I think you can never create a raceless society. I think Dr. Martin Luther King was absolutely wrong that we could create a society that's raceless. Because, yeah, that's in heaven. There's no racism there. But on earth, there will always be racism. So when you try to strive for something that is like, doesn't exist, cannot exist on earth, then you're setting up people for failure. And, I'm a 5th grade elementary teacher. I don't want to set anybody for a failure. My student can become the president of the United States because he's U.S. citizen, he was born in America. That's something he can achieve. But racist society, you cannot achieve that. Because why? Because there's different races who like their own race better. As long as you like your own race better, you are by definition racist, right? If you're like, I like Black people better, well, technically you're racist, right? But who doesn't like their own race better? I haven't met too many people who don't like their race better. Like if you go to UCLA, all the Black people are sitting with Black people, Koreans are sitting with Koreans, Latinos are sitting with Latinos. Obviously, they like their race better, so they're all racist technically, right? Because they have a preference for a certain race. Do you see what I'm saying? You will never get rid of racism. I mean, they may be like benign racism, positive racism, because they're sticking with their own race. It's a type of racism, but it's not a negative racism because they're not targeting other races, but they're galvanizing around their own race. That is technically a racism. I'm a historian, and this is all we do. We study terms. We write a PhD dissertation on one word. That's all we do for like years. We study one word. And implications, denotation, connotation, cultural relevance, socio-economic understanding of the term, psychological, socio-historical, psycho-historical, political economic. I mean, you could write like 10 books on one word. That's all we do, we historians. Do you see what I'm saying? And this is why you're lucky. I'm the Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century. I'm giving you all these insights that you need to create a better society, right? And that's why you need to vote for me for Virginia's 8th district, because I know how to create a better society. Like, this is why, I respect Dr. Luther King, but I think the person who came up with Black Lives Matter is better than Dr. Luther King, personally, just because Dr. Martin Luther King is preaching about a society where like lions and lamb will sit together. Do you think lions and lamb will ever sit together? I mean, lions are eating like their pet owners, I think Sigroy or Roy, the tiger show guy, wasn't he eaten by his own tiger? They're like tiger handlers that get eaten by their own tiger, pet tiger. I mean, how are lamb and tiger going to sit together in this world? It's not going to happen. That's why I just don't agree with Dr. Martin Luther King. When he says, I have a dream, that's what it is. It's a dream. It can never become a reality. And that's why, in a sense, I have tremendous respect for Dr. Martin Luther King as a person who had a vision. But I think that vision is what's destroying Black community, to be honest with you. Because he tried to create this like raceless society. And like everybody after him are like that thing, Martin Luther King, we want to create a society that has no racism. And they're spending their energy on that. It's a waste of time. Because you can never achieve that society. You can never achieve a society where lion and lamb are sitting together in peace. You're wasting your time if you want to create a world where lion and lamb sit together. It's not going to happen. And so, in a sense, I think Dr. Martin Luther King set up the Black people in America for failure with his vision. I love that sermon. He's preaching. I mean, he's like the greatest preacher after Billy Graham. I love he listened to Billy Graham, but after Billy Graham, like Dr. Martin Luther King, like the man can preach. But the point is this. There are things that cannot be achieved on earth. The sooner you accept that, the better it is, not only for you, but for people on earth who are suffering. You see what I'm saying? Had Dr. Martin Luther King focused on accepting that there's always going to be racism, but let's advance our children within this racist society, strategies in Black community would have been completely different. Strategies of the civil rights movement leaders would have been completely different. The strategies of NAACP would have been completely different. And I'm convinced, all my students are African American, 100% of them. I'm convinced we would have more Black, we would have a bigger Black middle class. There would not be as much crime rate. And Blacks would be on a more equal footing with whites. And I don't want to say I'm blaming Dr. Martin Luther King for the way things are, because obviously he's not the racist who hate Black people. But remember, racism is here to stay. Sooner you accept that, sooner you can make the lives of Black people better. So this is my point. You can spend all your energy trying to destroy racism, which is like trying to create a society with lions sitting with lamb. You will fail. You're being set up for failure. Or you could say, I recognize we're going to have racists. Let's just let them be racist in their own area. But let's work on creating a middle-class Black community, wealthy Black neighborhoods, successful Black students. Then you will be more successful raising the lives of Black people from poverty. Do you see what I'm saying? This is why I'm the Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century, because I solve problems. You think civil rights leaders talking about ending racism in society told you they're blue in the face who will end racism in society? Do you think that's going to happen ever? No, because lion will not sit with lamb. It will never happen. And that's why the tragedy of the Black civil rights movement is that the greatest civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, wanted everybody to be dreamers, to have a dream. No, dream is not going to feed you. Dream is not going to clothe you. Dream is not going to give you a roof over your head. Dream doesn't give you anything except make you feel inadequate. I don't want my children, I call my students my children, I'm not married, I've never been married, I don't have children, I would like to get married and have a lot of children, but so I call my students my children. I don't want any of my children to be poor. I want all of them to be successful. That's why I don't tell them have a dream of a racist society, because I know I'm setting them up for failure when I say that. That's what the civil rights leaders been saying since the 60s. Why isn't everything becoming better? Because that formula doesn't work. If it worked, then we should have African American communities in every city should be wealthy. If that formula works. But it doesn't work. We have to find the formula that works to make every black neighborhood in the city wealthy. And you're not going to get there by having dreams. You have to give people a goal that is achievable. And we call that SMART. As educators, we say, don't just set a goal, set a SMART goal, which is achievable. You know, and the same black educators who talk like that about, lesson objectives for teaching, English language arts, they turn around and start talking about a racist society, destroying racism and creating a 100% equal society. I'm like, oh my gosh. Why can't you use your SMART goals for black people in America? Goals that they could achieve. Like, yes, we can achieve a society where black people are not discriminated and mistreated by cops, whether they're racist or non-racist. That we can achieve. But you want to achieve a society where they're like, no racist cops? I mean, you're setting up everybody for failure. You're setting up the cops for failure. You're setting up the black community for failure. You're setting up the politicians for failure. You're setting up policymakers for failure. You're setting up everybody for failure. And that's why I'm saying, let's not do this. That's why I'm saying Baptist preachers in Virginia who preach against racism, they're creating more problems than solving problems. Do you see what I'm saying? You don't follow liberal progressives. Baptist preachers who preach against racism, they're following liberal progressives. What did liberal progressives give us in America? Except resentment, hatred, bitterness, and trying to put people into a box. That's not going to solve anybody's problem, because people are people. They're flesh and blood. They're going to have flaws. They're going to have strengths and weaknesses. That's what people are. And you got to be gracious to people who have flaws or people who are not like you. You cannot make everybody into you. And that is what we call fascism, right? You're trying to force people to become your slaves. And that is why I oppose every preacher in church preaching against racism. Because you're not following the Bible, number one, and you should follow the Bible. Number two, you're not solving the problem, you're creating the problem. What you should preach on is the Christian ethical value of treating other people with kindness, returning evil for good. These are in the gospel. Just stick to the script. Just stick to the script. And these Baptist preachers in Virginia, they're going off the script. No wonder this whole state is going in the wrong way. Stick to the script. Stick to the Bible, and you won't have problems. Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit more about my vision for a better America, my vision for America where Black Lives Matter, some other time. I know you want to hear more now. Everybody always want to hear more from me, but we have to stop on this topic right now, but I'll talk more in the future. Just keep tuning in. I'll create an America where Black people will rise. Unlike, I don't want to say that because I do respect Dr. Martin Luther King, but let's just not chase after dreams. That's not the America we need. We need reality, right? Where people are actually rising. That's what we need to create, not a dream world, right? So, let's go to top 5 COVID-19 cases. New York has 371,711 cases. Total death is at 29,917 deaths. New Jersey is number 2 at 160,918 cases, and the total death is at 11,723 deaths. Number 3, Illinois is 121,236 cases, and the total death is 5,412 deaths. California is number 4 at 114,733 cases, and the total deaths are 4,217 deaths. Massachusetts is at 100,805 cases, and the total deaths are at 7,035. So yeah, a lot of death in this state, and it's rising. Like Massachusetts, 7,000. When did it get there? It's like taking off. Illinois is at 5,000. California, 4,217. My goodness. But look at the artwork. George Floyd is a lucky man. Look at all this way of remembering him. You know, all these diverse artistic expressions. You know, I bet President Trump is jealous. People don't draw President Trump, right? I mean, you know, some do because he's the president, obviously. But I mean, look, George Floyd, of all these people drawing him. I mean, that's one way to honor him is to draw him, right? Because that's the way to like remember him and celebrate his life. So I wanted to share that with you as a way to remember him and celebrate his life. You know, he's done great things for America because he's brought this attention of how first responders can mistreat somebody because of their race. You know, and that's something that we need to keep talking about. And yeah, so one thing that I like about Generation Z, a lot of the protesters are Generation Z and millennials, is we do have some people talking about racism, but I think millennials are a little bit not as like labeling as others, you know? Like, look, you know, the drawing says, I can't breathe. You know, that's something we can all identify with. You know, please, I can't breathe. Justice for George, right? People are not using the word racism. This is the right direction to say, Black lives matter. We need justice for mistreatment, unfair treatment. You know, this is the right way to go. Using words like racism, it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help Black people, doesn't help white people, it helps no one. And that's why, yeah, we could talk about racism as a, you know, phenomena, like when we was talking about history and stuff like that. But when we want to solve problems, it's not helpful. Yeah, so that's why, you know, I like these drawings, and I like the way Generation Z, like people who are like 18, 19 right now, 20, generation millennials, like people who are like 25, the way they're approaching this, not all of them are like this, but many of them, the way they're approaching it, I think it's a better way to solve the problem of injustice in our society. Yeah. So I don't know, we may have some people come out in the African American community from the millennials, maybe my students, you know, who will make a significant difference. Let's see. Now, as you know, I'm the president of Georgetown Collaborative Diplomacy Initiative at Georgetown University, which is a school of foreign service group. We explore alternative ways of doing diplomacy. So one of the ways that we do diplomacy is through art. So, you know, I like art. I did 12 years of art from, you know, like elementary to all the way to like high school. So I like art. You know, I have an aunt who's an artist. Sugyung Jung, you know, Deaconess Sugyung Jung, she's an artist. And so I tried to combine the concept of art and literature, and I came up with my own literary device, and it's called Key Signifier. And you see the book that that on your screen, Key Signifier is literary device. So that's the book that I wrote to describe my literary device. It's definition, function, and literature and media. You see my name, Heerak Christian Kim. You can, you know, borrow this book from the library. I would recommend that you read it, especially if you like art, you're serious about art. One of the things that I discussed there is how culture and art work together. And art, we could talk about fine art, but also literature is considered art, right? A form of art. And one of the things that I discuss in this book that may interest you is that you can trigger a nation, a city, a town with an image or a word. So one of the things that I talk about is, like, look at the candle. When you look at the candle, what image comes to your mind? If you're a Christian, you may immediately think, oh, Jesus is the light of the world. If you come from a very churchy culture, that may be the image that comes to your mind. If you're Jewish, you may be like, oh, Hanukkah, Festival of Lights, where you light candles. So depending on your cultural, religious identity, the same image may trigger a different conceptual world. But what's special with my trigger or my key signifier is that it's double trigger. So not only does it trigger a collective memory, but it triggers people to action. And that's what makes my literary device great. And I explain that more fully in my book. It was written a while ago, but I'm working on a follow-up volume to that. So to give you an example, in Jewish community, when you say olam, it triggers the concept. Olam is Hebrew word for forever. It triggers a concept, at least in the Second Temple period. It triggers people to think about Brit Olam, which means everlasting covenant. And that's referring to the covenant that God made with Abraham, which is called Brit Olam, or everlasting covenant. And so for the Jews of the Second Temple period, if you use the word just Olam, forever, that immediately triggers the collective memory of Brit Olam. So that's the first trigger. Second trigger is that it causes people to try to observe the law of God. So in the cultural context, historical, sociological context, there is this double trigger. But it could be used in a good way or a bad way. Obviously, like any tool, you could use nuclear bomb to defend yourself or kill people. Well, actually, it could be the same thing, just depending on the perception. But I think the better example is nuclear energy. You could use nuclear energy to use it as a bomb to kill people, or nuclear energy to just give electricity to a lot of people, right? So I think that's a better example. So a same material can be used in a negative way or a positive way. And so when you see the creation artwork by Michelangelo, you have God and human Adam with finger kind of touching there. And that's where God is giving life to Adam, right? And underneath that, we have image of Adam and Eve being kicked out of the Garden of Eden for sinning. And sometimes these images are used to portray the gospel, right? And that's why some churches you go to, you have these images that depict gospel story that help people to come to know Jesus Christ, because people can relate to images more easily than words. And that's why art as cultural diplomacy can be powerful if you know how to harness the power of art. Like anything, you got to be able to control the power. And that's what my book tries to do. Tries to help you understand how you can control the power of art and literature to use it strategically. So art movement and Renaissance, Renaissance art has been very powerful, and some people say it has redirected Western civilization in a way that created logically a modern Western civilization. Leonardo da Vinci was one of the seminal figures during the Renaissance. And there was a movie called The Da Vinci Code that tries to kind of play on the idea of of art and image as a symbol that triggers. Uh, I actually presented a paper on the Da Vinci Code, the movie, to a bunch of academics. Uh, so yeah, but it's kind of interesting, what images can do. And you see the image of me holding up Hoya, 2020, celebrating my graduation. What what kind of emotion does it evoke in you? Do you feel a sense of identity with it? I mean, if you're graduating in 2020, you may feel a sense of identity, right? If you graduate from Georgetown, you may feel a stronger identity. Obviously, that kind of helps bridge the cognitive um, understanding of what I am showing you, and that is collective memory can be seen as shared experiences, right? Right? You have collective memory because you went through it together. So this generation, 2020, what are some of the collective memories we have? One is COVID-19, being locked away in your home, using Zoom. These are collective memories, right? Collective experiences. Now, George Floyd protests are collective experiences. These are now permanent part of our collective experience as American people that have a commonality that we can draw on. So I can use a key signifier that taps into that or harnesses that power. So during election 2020, you may see the harnessing of this power, especially by politicians who read my book and become experts at it. They'll be able to harness the power of recent events and collective memory. So we'll see, who reads my book. Election year is always a fun year. And so many things are changing. We don't know what's going to happen next, right? Did you expect this to happen? George Floyd died on May 25th. It's like a week ago. And look how America is turned upside down. Your world can literally change in a blink of an eye. There are things that could happen next week that you haven't seen, you haven't even imagined could happen. Yeah. That's why, being a historian is great. I'm a historian. And, I enjoy being a historian. Yeah, being a historian, it's interesting because history is so uncertain. There's so many uncertainties in life. Well, anyway, thanks for joining me for today's show. Check back tomorrow. We're going to have another great show tomorrow. So don't miss it. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And I hope that you'll be well and your family will be well as well. So see you tomorrow. Bye.